Hey guys, and welcome to this Little Dead Riding Hood makeup tutorial. Please enjoy the super slow-mo action happening on your computer screen right now. But I've wanted to do this for like 2 years, so let's get into it. I started off taking a white eyeliner and sketching out the area that I'm going to lay down my wound. The one that you see on my face was kind of like my first run at this. Typically when I do special effects videos, I really just kind of turn on the camera and see what happens. And luckily for me, this turned out pretty okay, I think. I will tell you when you're sketching out your wounds, make sure that the tip of the wound is much more narrow than the center. Then I'm taking some 2-ply toilet paper and I'm just going to tear it up and split it. I think it's actually 3-ply, so I got it down just to 1. And then I'm going to take some pieces of it and roll them up into really thin, I don't know, almost like vein-like looking pieces of it. After that, I'll take a Q-tip and some liquid latex and just trace out the area that I laid down my white eyeliner pencil. This is really hard to do on myself and in a mirror, so please excuse all the weird angles. But I'm going to lay this down on the areas that I want to put my liquid latex on with my Q-tip. You can use a brush if you want, but this is like a million times easier. I just narrowed down that piece of toilet paper one more time, and I am just going to lay it ever so gracefully just on top of the area that I put down my liquid latex. You might find that if your ends get too thick, you have to tear it, which is what happened right here, just to make sure that it stayed as thin as possible because we do have a claw mark there, typically more narrow. You're going to have to go in and kind of roll up your pieces of toilet paper and lay them along carefully. Take your time with this. This is the most time-consuming part of this makeup, which I really didn't think was that difficult at all. I mean, I busted this out in about an hour, including the actual beauty makeup part of it, which I didn't include because I really didn't see a point. Fun fact. I have a million tutorials that have a beauty makeup in it, and I'll link one here that is kind of similar. But yeah, after you lay that toilet paper down on top of your liquid latex that is on top of your white line, you're going to cover the top of that toilet paper with liquid latex as well. So as you see, I put down my line of latex, I laid down my toilet paper scrap. When I got to the top, I kind of had to lay it down and then rip off the excess to get it to be the right size, especially right here near my eye. It was kind of hard to get close to it, so that's what's going on right here. You might find that you have to do a similar situation depending on where you decide to lay down your toilet paper. But after I get it down, I will cover it up once again with the liquid latex. You're just going to repeat this process as many times as you see fit. You might find that you have to twist or pinch your toilet paper to get it narrow and to fit along the sides of your white eyeliner that you laid down. While I'm thinking about it, because it's driving me absolutely crazy, all that white stuff in my hair right now is just liquid latex that got on my hand, and then I went to go like readjust my ponytail and I got liquid latex all in my hair. I just had to say that because it's driving me nuts, so it probably is driving you nuts too, but anyway. So anyway, after you get that part done, once again, just finishing the process. I will say the real challenge with this is getting your paper thin enough. As you see, I'm going in and tearing up a piece again just to get it as narrow and thin as possible, because you don't want to cover up too much of the center part of your wound, because that's really where you're going to get to go in and create the effect of the wound, like the blood and the gore and the guts and all that good stuff. So just make sure you take your time getting your pieces of paper. I keep wanting to say peepers. Make sure you get your peepers nice and thin. No, your paper. Make sure you get your paper nice and thin. As you can see, I'm just kind of messing with it and tearing it and ripping it. It got easier by the time I got to the very last wound on my face. Like, I had it down to a science. It just takes a minute. I would say if you're doing this for Halloween, I would just kind of give it one dry run, maybe on the back of your hand or something, to make sure you have it down. But once you get it down, I'm serious, this is probably the easiest Halloween tutorial or Halloween makeup I've ever done. And then I'm going through once again and laying some more liquid latex on top of the already placed down toilet paper and kind of manipulating it and making sure that it is exactly where I want it to go. Once again, repeating the process, you can feel free to take down the wound as far as you want to. You can leave it just along your neck if you wanted to. I think that'd be pretty cool too. When I got down to my neck, especially really far down here like this, it was difficult. I can say with 1,000% certainty that this would have been only 1,000,000 times easier to do on somebody else as opposed to myself. But like I said, take your time. This is going to be very repetitious, but I considered taking this out of the video, this little action of me doing the same thing over and over again out of the video, but I thought I'd leave it in because I didn't want you guys, if you tried this on yourself, to give up, and maybe you'd have to see kind of how I maneuver my fingers and how to lay it down a couple of times before it, you know, kind of sunk in, so to speak. Like, as you can see right now, like, I've got it down. I figured out how to get that paper just thin enough, and I just start laying it down in one big long strips instead of smaller strips. So yeah, trust the process, get it all on there. And even after I finished doing this part, what I'm doing right now, laying down my scar tissue on this wound, after I finished that, I went back to the wound before it and I put some more liquid latex on top of it again, and I did the same thing with this one. So when I finished this wound, I moved on to the next one, and then when I finished the next one, I went back after and laid more liquid latex down on the wound that I had completed before, just to make sure it was nice and hard, and just to make sure that my edges were smooth and that everything was laid down exactly where I wanted it to be. And then, as you guessed it, after I get done with this one, I'm going to move on to the next one too. I'm going to cut that out though. I think you guys got the point by now. Once I've sealed them that one last time with my liquid latex, I took a little sponge from an art store and just stippled a little bit of it along some of the edges of the wound, and especially at the very ends of the wound and at the tips of the wounds, just to kind of help it blend a little bit into my skin. And then that way, like, it wasn't as if there was this big tear on my skin and then just completely smooth skin next to it. If I stippled a little bit of liquid latex up near the actual end and beginning of the wound, I thought it would kind of give the effect of just a little bit of irritation. Then I moved on to color my wound, just the skin tone part, the outer edge of it. Do not skip this step. Obviously, you're going to cover up most of it with latex, with a red color, but if you don't cover it up with a color that's the same color as your skin tone, you're going to be able to see just white sticking through, and it will not look good. I'm using alcohol activated paints in this case. I will leave them down below, but you could totally do this with just using regular concealer or foundation. I say in all my Halloween tutorials, just use what you have. There's no need to go spend a grip for Halloween unless you're just balling out that way. After I laid down that part, I started to fill in the wound using a blood-toned alcohol-activated paint, and I built that up to my desired opacity. You could do this with lipstick, you could do it with eyeshadow, you could do it with grease paint, you could use it with whatever you have. But I based it out in the lightest of the colors that I was going to go in with on the inside of my wound, and then I started rubbing a darker toned blood color. I think it was the dried blood one, slightly on the outer part of the wound and a little bit on the very, very edges of the wound on the inside where it connected to my skin. I kind of went through and built up the blood tone a couple more times because the way alcohol activated paints work is they're activated by alcohol. So if I didn't wait for one layer of the alcohol, that looks so gross. If I didn't wait for one layer of the alcohol to dry before I went in with another one, I just kind of moved it around and didn't make it look as opaque as I wanted to. So that's what's going on there. Make sure you get all along the insides. Take a camera if you need to take pictures of the outside of your wounds to make sure you didn't leave any white spots. Then I'm going to take a darker bruise tone, mix a little bit of black just to kind of run it along the edges of the wound. This is just going to give it depth and dimension just because we're doing sci-fi makeup. Sci-fi makeup, what? Special effects makeup doesn't mean we want to like completely abandon all of our principles of makeup that we all know and love, which is darker colors create contrast and dimension. Then I took some black, mostly black with like a dot of the bruise color, and added it even closer to, I guess, what you would call the incision of the wound. I really didn't want it to go very far into it, and I don't know if I show myself doing it or not, but I'm sure I do. Every time I laid down a little bit of that black color, I went in and I raised in a little bit more of the blood tone or the bruise tone just to make sure it wasn't so stark. The point of this darkness along the edge, at least as far as I'm concerned, is to really create the illusion that the torn skin that's right above that black is really, really raised. And then I just went in with a little bit of dried blood from the palette and just kind of touched it along the edges, put a little bit on the center, on the tips. Like I said, obviously most of the tan that we laid down first is covered, but you know, you want to make it look like most of it is red. Now I'm just adding a little bit of dried blood. This is coagulated dried blood gel from MEHRON, I believe. I just kind of pushed and poked it all up in the wound to make it look really kind of wet and gooey. Take your time with this and don't go too crazy with the blood because it does kind of kill it. And as you can see, I have on my beauty makeup like I said before, and if you want to see a tutorial on that, feel free to check out others of my videos. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this super easy Red Riding Hood makeup, and I will catch you in the next one. Love you more than you'll ever know.